Hi, this is Carson from Guys with Games, and this will be lesson 2 in our 20-part series on grammar, sentence structure. Our lesson today will include 6 parts, including parts of a sentence, objects, types of sentences, word order, voice, and an activity. To skip ahead to a specific part in this lesson, view the timestamps in the description. Let's start with the parts of a sentence. The key vocabulary terms here are subject and predicate. The subject of a sentence is the noun or the pronoun which performs the verb, and all sentences contain verbs. The complete predicate is the verb and everything else, such as objects or adverbial clauses. Here are some examples. Number 1. The soldiers jumped into the water. First, we can identify the verb of the sentence, in this case, jumped. The soldiers are the noun which performed the verb. So, the complete subject is the soldiers, and the complete predicate is jumped into the water. Number 2, I haven't seen you in many years. The complete subject here is the simple pronoun I. The complete predicate is haven't seen you in many years. Number 3, the toilet in the guest bedroom doesn't work. The verb starts with doesn't work. That is the complete predicate, which leaves the toilet in the guest bedroom as our subject. Number 4 is written in passive voice, which we'll talk about later, but it reads, the entire forest was cleared by a single man with an axe. Normally, we identify a subject as the noun which performs the verb, cleared. But in this case, it's written to focus on the forest. So the forest becomes the subject of our sentence. Was cleared by a single man with an axe is the complete predicate. We'll talk about this more later. For now, let's move on to objects. This chapter will focus on direct and indirect objects. A direct object is the noun or pronoun that the verb happens to. Here's an example. Susan ate a cheeseburger. Susan is the subject of the sentence. The verb is to eat, and a cheeseburger is the noun which eat happened to. This makes a cheeseburger the direct object of this sentence. Let's add some adjectives to our object here. Susan ate an expensive gourmet cheeseburger. Here, the adjectives expensive and gourmet are just modifiers of the noun cheeseburger. This makes expensive gourmet cheeseburger our complete direct object. Let's move on to indirect objects. An indirect object is the indirect recipient of the verb or the direct object. For example, the witness gave the police a statement. The subject in this sentence is the witness. The verb is to give. The direct object is a statement, but the indirect object here is the police. In our second example, the witness gave a statement to the police. Sounds like the same sentence, and it does mean the same thing. But in this case, the witness is the subject, to give is the verb, a statement is the direct object, but to the police is an adverbial clause which modifies the verb to give. So there is no indirect object in this sentence. Next, we'll take a look at the 4 types of sentences in the order in which they're most commonly used. The first being declarative. A declarative sentence tells something. It always contains a subject, either a noun or a pronoun, a verb, and it will always end in a period, or what British English calls a full stop. Here are some examples. The first 2 use active voice with normal word order. She's sleeping. Frances Farmer will have her revenge on Seattle. But the third sentence uses something called passive voice, which again we'll discuss later. John was fired this morning. For now, let's move on to interrogative sentences. An interrogative sentence asks a question. It must contain a subject, either a noun or a pronoun, and a verb, either a main verb or an auxiliary verb. It will always end with a question mark. Here are some examples. Can you swim? What do you want to eat? Why was the game delayed? Moving on, imperative sentences. An imperative sentence will sound like an instruction or a command. It contains a verb, and it will end with a period. Here are some examples. Sit down, please. Bring the water to a boil. Be sure to like and subscribe. The last type of sentence is called exclamatory. An exclamatory sentence conveys heightened emotion. It contains a subject, a verb, and it ends with an exclamation point. Here are some examples. What a fool I've been. How beautiful you've become. What big teeth you have. If you look carefully, you'll notice we use the word what before a noun, like what an idiot, and the word how before an adjective. How interesting. The next topic is word order. English uses something called SVO as its preferred word order, meaning first subject, then verb, then objects, in the majority of its spoken and written sentences. It's interesting to note, though, that the most common preferred word order in languages across the world is SOV word order, where the object comes between the subject and the verb. This can add an extra layer of complexity when doing translations. Anyway, let's look at some English examples. Elizabeth runs. Although not very interesting, this is a complete sentence. The verb to run is performed by the subject Elizabeth. In our second example, we have Eric wants, but we have a problem. This is not a complete sentence because the verb to want cannot stand on its own. What does Eric want? We need something else, and that something else is called a complement. When we add a new car to the sentence, we have Eric, the subject, wants, the verb, a new car, the object. The third sentence, Samantha drove to the airport. We have the subject Samantha, the verb drive, but no object. To the airport is an adverbial clause to modify the verb drive. The last sentence is written in passive voice. The house was built by the original owner. The main verb here is build, but it must be conjugated to fit passive voice. In passive voice, the recipient of the verb becomes the subject of the sentence. In this case, our subject is the house. The verb, be plus build, and the object is the original agent of this verb, the original owner. In the last topic of today's lesson, we'll talk about the differences between active and passive voice. We normally use active voice when speaking or writing. In active voice, the subject of the sentence is the agent responsible for the verb. It's mentioned first. In passive voice, though, this agent becomes the object. The subject of a passive voice sentence is the recipient of a verb, and the agent responsible for that verb is either mentioned as the object or not at all. Let's do a side-by-side comparison of two sentences. In active voice, Henry plays basketball. Henry is the agent performing the verb play. Its passive counterpart, basketball, is played by Henry. Well, that doesn't sound right. And the reason it doesn't sound right is that basketball is too grand of a topic to be mentioned in this way. The second one, a car hit my dog yesterday. Technically this is okay, but we normally don't speak this way. We want our subject to be the dog. My dog was hit by a car yesterday. In this situation, the passive version better conveys the meaning behind the sentence. Quickly, let's look at the conjugation of the verb in a passive sentence. We need to use the be verb and the past participle form of the main verb. This indicates to the reader or the listener that the main verb happened to our subject, which is the focus of our sentence. Finally, let's look at some reasons why passive voice might omit the agent or the performer of the verb. It could be that the agent is not known. The car was vandalized. It could be that the agent is implied. Tom was fired this morning. We can infer that Tom was fired by his boss. Or it could be that the agent is intentionally left out to conceal the identity. Mistakes were made. And now an activity to review what we've learned. It's called Dice of Fortune. We'll start by listing 6 items we want to review on the whiteboard and numbering them 1 through 6. We'll choose a student and assign him or her a verb. That student will roll a single die, and the result indicates what kind of sentence they need to make using their verb. A successful answer will earn 1 point for their team. And that's it. Thanks for watching.